The morning after his wedding, Caleb Boone woke to an empty bed. The quilt still bore the hollow where she'd lain, but her side was cold, her trunk was gone. So was the silver spoon his mother had carried west, wrapped in a scrap of calico, and the Winchester Caleb had kept loaded by the door, a bride one night, a ghost by dawn. Folks would later ask why he trusted her in the first place, why he tied himself to a woman no one in the county knew, who rode in with no kin, no papers, no proof. But in that dim light, staring at the indentation where her body had been, Caleb understood one thing clear as sunrise. He hadn't just been left, he'd been played. And yet this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning, because what she took wasn't near as important as what she left behind. Now let me take you back a few weeks before that cold morning made him question his own judgment. Caleb Boone was 31, a rancher by trade, stubborn as mulehide and near as broke. The summer of '72 had burned his pasture down to dirt. He lost 20 head of cattle to thirst, another dozen to rustlers who knew a struggling man couldn't guard both borders of his land at once. He carried debt like a shadow. Banks in Abilene had already turned him away twice. So when she rode up, dark skin catching the last of the sun, eyes sharp as if they'd measured every danger west of the Mississippi, Caleb didn't see a savior, he saw trouble. She called herself Lenora Mayfield. She didn't offer a hand, only a proposal. "I need a husband," she said plain, sitting tall in the saddle of a worn bay mare. "Not for love, for protection. And I can pay." Caleb had half a mind to laugh her off his land, but she reached into her satchel, pulled out a purse that jingled heavy, and tossed it down on his porch boards. Coins spilled, silver and gold, more money than he'd seen in a year. "I won't explain why," she said. "Not now. You just need to stand beside me before the preacher, keep your name on the paper and keep your mouth shut about what don't concern you." Her voice carried the clipped rhythm of someone used to being dismissed. But there was steel under it. She didn't flinch when Caleb's hand hovered near the Colt on his hip. Now if you'd been in his boots, broke, near desperate, half proud, half starved, you might have asked the same question he did. "What's the catch?" Lenora gave a half smile, but her eyes stayed hard. "The catch is you'll have to trust me, and I can't promise you that won't cost." Word travels fast in a town like Dry Creek. Within 2 days of her arrival, whispers filled the saloon. Some said she was a runaway from back east, dodging kin who'd marry her off for profit. Others claimed she was tied to railroad money, maybe even running from it. A few more hateful tongues spat worse, that no white man in 3 counties would touch her, so she went hunting for a fool. Caleb ignored them or tried. He wasn't blind to the stares when he walked beside her, wasn't deaf to the laughter that followed them out the mercantile door. But he'd lived with whispers before. His mother had been Choctaw, his father a drifter from Missouri. Folks had long memories for bloodlines they didn't like. Caleb learned young that a man can't eat other people's approval. Still doubt itched him raw. Who was this woman really, and why him? The wedding itself was plain. A preacher who didn't ask questions, 2 witnesses who couldn't meet Lenora's eyes, and Caleb sweating under a collar he hadn't worn since his daddy's burial. She spoke her vows clear without tremor or hesitation. Caleb for his part muttered his way through, still trying to reckon whether he was marrying salvation or ruin. Afterward they rode back to the ranch. She cooked that night, cornbread crisp at the edges, beans with a bite of pep. Caleb ate in silence, watching how she moved about the kitchen like she'd always belonged there, yet never let her back face him long. Trust didn't come easy to either of them. First days passed quiet enough. Lenora kept house, worked the garden, even helped mend fence. Caleb found himself surprised by her grit. She never complained about dust storms or long rides. She laughed once, when his horse nearly pitched him into a creek, and the sound startled him more than the near fall. But come night he'd catch her at the window, staring out across the dark prairie like she expected riders to crest the ridge any moment. Once he woke to find her gone from bed, lantern low in the barn. She claimed she couldn't sleep. He didn't press, but a seed of unease had rooted in him. On the night before she vanished, they sat by the hearth. Wind rattled the shutters. Caleb poured a glass of whiskey, offered her one. She shook her head. "You don't ask much of me," she said, almost soft. "That's good. Best we keep it that way." Caleb leaned back, the fire painting her face in flickers. "One day you'll have to tell me what you're running from." Her gaze didn't waver, and one day you'll wish you'd never known. It should have chilled it. Instead, something in her voice, something weary, maybe wounded, tugged at the part of him that remembered his mother's warnings. The world will break you, son, if you don't learn who to trust. By morning she was gone, and here's where the story truly begins. Because Lenora didn't just disappear with Caleb's silver and rifle, she left behind a clue. Something so strange and dangerous, it tied Caleb to her fate whether he wanted it or not. And before the week was out, riders would come looking. Men with questions, guns, and no patience for half-truth. Caleb Boone didn't waste time staring at the empty bed. Shock only gets a man killed. He pulled on his boots, checked the yard. No horse. The mare she'd ridden in on was gone, and so was the gelding he'd raised from a colt. His gut twisted, not from the theft, but from what he saw nailed to the barn door. It was a scrap of canvas, ragged at the edges, daubed with tar, and a symbol Caleb had only seen once before, a circle split by a jagged line, like lightning striking through the sun. He'd spotted it years ago, carved into the flank of a dead steer, left as a warning by the kind of men who didn't bother with words. Back then he thought it the mark of cattle thieves, but now it felt older, darker. Lenora hadn't left him nothing. She'd left him a target. By noon dust plumed on the southern road. Caleb's first thought was her, that maybe Lenora had doubled back, conscience stirring. But as the rider drew near, he saw broad shoulders, a grey coat, and a wide-brimmed hat shading eyes that had scanned too many battlefields. The man dismounted slow, his boots crunching gravel. He didn't offer a name, only looked past Caleb toward the barn door, his gaze locked on that tar-stained symbol. "You seen her?" the man asked, voice flat. Caleb kept his hand near the colt. "Depends who you're asking about." The man's mouth twitched, half sneer, half smile. "Name's Lenora Mayfield. Dark hair, eyes sharp enough to skin you alive. Rode through here 2 nights back." Caleb's chest tightened. He wanted to lie to buy himself space to but the man's stare pinned him in place, steady as a rifle sight. "Why you after her?" Caleb asked. The stranger stepped closer, dust still clinging to his coat. "Because what she carries don't belong to her, and men are dead because of." The stranger introduced himself as Asa Creed, former scout, now hunting runaways and thieves. He spoke little, but what he shared weighed heavy. Said Lenora had lifted something from a rail office in Abilene. Not money, not papers, something Creed called a ledger with teeth. When Caleb frowned, Creed only said, "Names are in it, powerful names. If those names go public, men will kill to silence her. They'll kill you too, if they think you're standing in the way." Caleb thought of her by the window at night, staring into the dark. He thought of the half-smile she gave when she said, "One day you'll wish you'd never known." He realized he was already in it. Deep that evening, Caleb found the first sign he wasn't alone anymore. A boot print by the well, smaller than Creed's, fresher than his own. Another near the back fence, half covered in dust, as though someone had circled the ranch while he and Creed talked. He didn't tell Creed right away. Something about the man's silence rattled him. Creed carried himself like a wolf, helpful so long as their trails ran the same way, but liable to turn if hunger struck. Instead, Caleb checked his Winchester rack, and cursed again when he remembered Lenora had taken it. He still had the Colt, though, and an old shotgun his daddy had cut down to fit under a saddle. They'd have to do. 2 nights later, Caleb found something stranger still. The garden rose lay quiet under moonlight, but tucked beneath a cabbage leaf, folded neat, was a note. He lit the lantern and read words written in a woman's hand. "Trust no one. They'll come through the ridge road first. If you still mean what you said by the fire, meet me by the creek at dawn." No name signed, but it didn't need one. Caleb's pulse thumped like a drum. He remembered what he'd said by the fire, how he'd pressed her. "One day you'll have to tell me what you're running from," and her reply, "One day you'll wish you'd never known." Now, she was giving him the choice. Caleb slipped the note into his pocket. He should have pretended it never existed, but Creed was watching him like a hawk watches a field mouse. "You look like a man with something to hide," Creed said over breakfast, tearing at cold biscuits. Caleb forced a shrug. "Only hide my temper most days." Creed's eyes narrowed. "You ain't a liar, Boone. That's good. Lying will get you killed in this game. But I'll tell you straight, if she sends word, if she tries to reel you back in, you best remember she's poison. You drink what she offers, you'll choke on it. Caleb chewed slow, said nothing. Inside, his choice gnawed at him like rats in the walls. Dawn painted the prairie pale gold. Caleb rode alone, leaving Creed snoring in the bunkhouse. His breath fogged in the chill, hooves muffled on soft earth. He followed the creek's winding line until he saw her. Lenora, half hidden in the willows, her mare tied off behind her. She looked thinner, eyes sunken from sleepless nights, but her presence still carried iron. You came, she said. Relief flickered before her guard slammed back in place. You left me, Caleb shot back. Took what wasn't yours. Her jaw tightened. I left because Creed found me. If I'd stayed, you'd be buried already. From her satchel she drew a small book, leather-bound, worn at the edges. She held it like a rattler that might strike. This is what they want, she said. A ledger full of transactions, railroad contracts, shipments, names of men who'll slit throats to keep it hidden. I stole it because my brother died for it. He worked that rail line, found out too much. They hung him and called it just. Her voice cracked, just once, then hardened again. I won't let his blood be wasted. Caleb stared at the book. Suddenly, her midnight vigils, her half-spoken warnings, the tar symbol, they fit into a puzzle that spelled nothing but danger. You trust me enough to hand that over? Caleb asked. Lenora shook her head. I trust you enough to give you a choice. Ride with me, and you'll see just how deep this goes. Stay with Creed and you'll be safe for a while. But they'll come, Caleb. They always come. Her words hung in the morning air, heavy as storm clouds. Caleb thought of his ranch, of the debt still gnawing at him, of the loneliness that had haunted every room before she filled it with quiet fire. He thought of his mother's warning, the world will break you, son, if you don't learn who to trust. Behind him a twig snapped. Caleb's hand went to his Colt, but it was too late. Creed stepped from the brush, rifle raised, eyes colder than dawn. Funny thing about trust, Creed said, voice low. It always bleeds a man dry. And right then, Caleb knew whatever choice he thought he had was gone. Because in that moment, with Creed's rifle leveled and Lenora clutching the ledger, he realized the real question wasn't who to trust. It was who to betray first. Creed's rifle never wavered. The sun was barely over the ridge, dew still clinging to the grass. Yet Caleb Boone felt sweat bead down his back. He stood caught between two forces, Creed, steady-eyed and deadly, and Lenora, clutching that ledger like a lifeline. Step away from her, Boone, Creed said, and don't make me ask twice. Caleb's Colt was heavy on his hip, but he knew better than to draw on a man who already had him in his sights. His horse pawed the ground nervously, sensing the storm brewing between steel and flesh. Lenora didn't flinch. She raised her chin, eyes locked on Creed. I knew you'd track me. You always were a hound for scraps, tossed by rich men. Creed's jaw flexed, just enough to betray the sting of her words. Scraps keep me alive. Ideals get people killed. Hand it over, Lenora. I'll let Boone walk free. Caleb didn't believe him for a second. For a moment, no one moved. The creek gurgled low behind them. Birds chattered in the brush, oblivious. Caleb's mind raced. If he stayed silent, Creed would take the ledger. If he spoke, he might trigger a bullet. So he did the only thing he knew. He stalled. Creed, Caleb said slowly. You keep saying that book's got names. Fine. But answer me this. Why do those men pay you to fetch it instead of burning it themselves? Creed's eyes flicked to him, and that fraction of distraction was all Lenora needed. She hurled a fistful of creek mud straight into his face. Creed cursed, wiping at his eyes. Caleb lunged sideways, dragging Lenora down with him as the rifle cracked. The shot split the air, whistled past Caleb's ear, and buried itself in a cottonwood trunk. They hit the dirt hard, breath knocked from Caleb's lungs. Lenora scrambled up, dragging him toward her mare. Creed was already chambering another round. The second shot rang out as Lenora vaulted into the saddle. Caleb's gelding was gone. She'd taken it days before, but she reached a hand down, and Caleb grabbed it. Pain shot through his shoulder as she hauled him up behind her. The mare bolted, hooves striking sparks from the rocky creek bed. Creed shouted after them, a third bullet zipping past. Caleb twisted to fire back with his Colt, more for noise than aim. Creed ducked, but didn't pursue. His horse was tied too far off. Wind tore at Caleb's face as they thundered across open prairie. He clung to Lenora's waist, heart pounding, the reality of his choice settling like lead. He'd thrown in with her now, ledger and all. They didn't stop until dusk, when the mare foamed and staggered. They made camp in a dry gully, smoke from the fire hidden by rock wall. Caleb sat across from her, watching how her hands shook slightly as she wrote in a scrap notebook. "You lied to me," he said finally. "Said marrying you was just protection. Said money'd solve it." Lenora's pen stilled. She didn't look up. "Would you have said yes if I told you the truth?" "No." "Then I did what I had to." The honesty cut sharper than any excuse. Caleb ran a hand through his hair, staring at the stars peeking out. He wanted to hate her. He wanted to ride home, forget all this. But when he pictured Creed's cold eyes, the tar symbol on his barn, the boot prints by his well, he knew the fight was already at his doorstep. "You said your brother died for this ledger," Caleb said quietly. "Tell me how." Her gaze lifted, firelight glinting in her eyes, and for the first time she spoke without armor. Her brother, Isaac, had worked the Kansas Pacific line, a surveyor with a sharp mind for numbers. He'd discovered books didn't add up, supplies ordered that never arrived, payments signed off by men who never touched the work. When Isaac pressed, supervisors warned him to drop it. He didn't. They came at night, Lenora said, voice low, dragged him from his bunkhouse, strung him from a cottonwood, left a note pinned to his chest, said it was justice for theft. But I saw the ledgers. I knew better. She swallowed hard, staring into the flames. So I took what he died for. I swore I'd carry it east, to men who'd listen, to courts, to papers. Caleb stared into the fire, bile rising in his throat. He'd seen lynch mobs, seen how quick men could turn law into a noose. Her story rang true, too true. They thought they were safe in the gully. They were wrong. Near midnight, the mare snorted and stamped. Caleb rose, shotgun in hand, and caught the glint of steel above. A figure crouched on the ridge, rifle angled down. "Down!" Caleb hissed, shoving Lenora aside as a shot cracked, sparking off stone. He fired back blindly. The figure cursed, retreating into the dark. Lenora scrambled to the fire, stamping it out with her boots. "They found us," she panted. "Not they," Caleb muttered. "Him, Creed. He'd tracked them, maybe never far behind. Morning found them hollow-eyed, nerves frayed. The mare limped now, slowing their flight. Caleb knew Creed would strike again, maybe with others at his back. "We can't run forever," he said. "You want that ledger east? You'll need allies, men who'll bleed before they hand you over." Lenora shook her head. "I don't trust anyone. You trusted me." She gave a bitter laugh. "I forced you." "No," Caleb said firmly. "You gave me a choice, and now I'm giving you one. We ride north to Dry Creek. Sheriff there's crooked, but the newspaperman Carter Wells, he's honest. If we get him this ledger, maybe the truth stands a chance." Lenora studied him, eyes narrowing. "And if Creed gets there first, then Dry Creek burns," Caleb answered. Relief stirred in Caleb's chest, but as they started down, 5 riders broke from a copse of mesquite guns glinting, dust boiling behind them. Creed at the lead. "Down!" Caleb shouted, yanking Lenora from the saddle as bullets whined past. The mare screamed, went down hard. Caleb and Lenora tumbled into scrub, dirt, biting their skin. Creed's voice carried over the gunfire, cold and sure. "No more running, Boone. Hand her over." Caleb rolled, drew his Colt, fired twice. One rider went spinning from the saddle, the others scattering briefly. But Creed kept coming, relentless as a storm, pinned in the dirt, bullets chewing the ground around him. Caleb realized the fight had come to its breaking point. No more hiding, no more half-truth. Dry Creek was in sight, but if he and Lenora didn't survive this ambush, the ledger would vanish into fire and silence just like her brother. And in that instant, Caleb faced the one truth he couldn't escape. Sometimes survival ain't about choosing who to trust, it's about choosing who to die beside. The scrub tore Caleb's palms raw as he dragged himself deeper into cover. Bullets hissed overhead, splintering mesquite branches. Lenora crouched beside him, clutching the ledger tight against her chest, like a shield that couldn't stop. 5 riders, Caleb hissed, peering through dust. 4 now. Creed won't stop, Lenora said, voice steady though her hands trembled. Not while I'm breathing. Then we make sure he's the one who don't walk away, Caleb growled. The crack of rifles echoed again. Caleb's Colt clicked empty. He cursed under his breath. All he had left was the cut-down shotgun slung at his side. 2 barrels, 2 chances. After that, bare hands and stubbornness. Creed's voice carried across the dry wash, cold as a snake's belly. Boone, you ain't built for this. Walk away and I'll leave your bones to bleach proper. Stay, and I'll bury you in her place. Caleb spat grit. Funny thing, Creed, I don't take kindly to being told where to lay. The riders fanned wide, circling down the slope to pin them in. Dust rose like smoke, turning the sun into a pale coin. Caleb shoved Lenora flat against the rocks. When I say run, you run for town. Find Carter Wells at the print shop. You tell him the truth. You hear me? No matter what. Her eyes flashed fierce and wounded all at once. I won't leave you. You will, Caleb snapped. A ledger dies with me, but in your hands it might live. He didn't wait for her reply. He surged up, shotgun booming. 1 rider went spinning, horse screaming as it veered into the wash. The second barrel barked a heartbeat later, sending another man sprawling in the dust. Creed shouted orders, but the sudden chaos gave Caleb and Lenora the opening they needed. He yanked her up, and they bolted. They tore down the ridge, bullets snapping past like angry hornets. Dry Creek lay ahead, its single street stirring with life, townsfolk pausing, shading eyes, watching 2 desperate riders sprint in with death snapping at their heels. The first horseshoes clattered on boardwalk planks as Caleb and Lenora crashed into town. Behind them, Creed and his 2 remaining men thundered in, guns barking, shutters slammed, mothers dragged children inside, shopkeepers bolted doors, but 1 man stepped into the street, Sheriff Rawley, shotgun across his arm, badge catching the glare. Boone, Rawley barked. What in hell's fire is this? Ask him, Caleb shouted, pointing back at Creed. The sheriff turned, and for a breath it seemed law might take hold, but then Caleb saw it, the twitch in Creed's mouth, the small nod Rawley gave in reply, and Caleb knew, Rawley wasn't a save, he was bought. Drop your gun, Boone, Rawley ordered, voice steady. Town don't need your trouble. Town's got trouble already. Caleb shot back. Creed reined in, calm as Sunday service. That ledger, Sheriff. The woman's got it. You take it off her hands, and we all walk away clean. Rawley's eyes slid to Lenora, cold, calculating. You hand it over, Rawley told her, and maybe I'll forget you brought hell to my street. The townsfolk peeked from behind curtains, whispers buzzing like flies. Caleb could feel Lenora stiffen beside him, could feel the weight of the ledger pressing against her chest. And then, before Caleb could speak, another voice rang out, "Don't give it to him." A thin, wiry man stepped from the print shop doorway, ink stains still on his sleeves. Carter Wells, newspaperman, town's only conscience. He carried no gun, only a sheaf of paper clutched tight. "That book belongs to the people," Wells said, his voice shaking but loud enough to carry. "Sheriff, you take it, you prove every word in it true. You'd silence her same as them." Creed's smile thinned. "Step back, printer, before you get bound in your own press." But Wells didn't move. And in that moment, something shift. Townsfolk edged back into the street, quiet, cautious, but present, watching, weighing. Caleb knew the tide of fear could turn, but only if someone lit the fuse. Creed swung down from his saddle, rifle loose in his grip. "I'll ask once more, Lenora. Hand it over, and I'll spare your pet rancher." Lenora's gaze cut to Caleb. He saw it, the fear, the exhaustion, but also the iron. Slowly she shook her head. "No." Time froze. Creed raised his rifle. Caleb lunged. The street erupted in thunder. Caleb slammed into Creed as the rifle fired, the shot going wide, shattering a saloon window. They hit the dirt, grappling, Creed's knife flashing from his belt. Caleb caught his wrist, straining, every muscle burning. Lenora fired Caleb's Colt, the report deafening. One of Creed's men dropped. The other turned his gun on her, only to crumple as Wells of all men swung a cast-iron printer's bar into his skull. The sheriff. He stood frozen, caught between sides, his badge meaningless now under a dozen watching eyes. Creed snarled, driving his knee into Caleb's gut. The knife inched closer, cold steel grazing Caleb's throat. "You don't know what you've stepped into, Boone," Creed hissed. "This ledger's bigger than railroads, bigger than you, her, or this town. Men back east will buy governments to bury it." Caleb spat blood, muscles trembling. "Then maybe it's worth more than any of us." With a roar he twisted hard, slamming Creed's knife hand into the dirt. The blade flew free. Caleb snatched it, driving the edge across Creed's forearm. Creed bellowed, staggering back. Lenora leveled the Colt. Creed froze, chest heaving, blood running down his sleeve. Silence fell over Dry Creek. Smoke curled from broken glass, dust hung in the air. Every eye was on the sheriff. Rawley swallowed, sweat trickling, his shotgun sagged, but he didn't raise it again. Not against Creed. Not against Caleb. He saw the crowd gathering, their stares sharp, unforgiving. "You best leave this town," Rawley muttered finally, voice cracked. "All of you, take your damn book and your damn war elsewhere." It wasn't justice, but it was survival for now. Creed's glare promised otherwise. "This ain't over, Boone. You can't stop what's coming." As Creed mounted up and rode out, the town breathed again, but Caleb knew the truth. This was only the first skirmish. The ledger still burned in Lenora's hands, and men with deeper pockets and longer reach than Creed would come hunting. And as night fell over Dry Creek, one thought chilled Caleb Boone to the bone. If Creed was just the hound, what kind of wolf had loosed him? Carter Wells' print shop smelled of hot metal and stubborn truth, the flywheel of his press clattering like a drumbeat against corruption. Each page rolled wet with names. Sheriff Rawley, Judge Pike, Senator Varney, laid bare in black and white. Caleb Boone stood guard at the door, Colt in one hand, shotgun near the other, coat heavy with the sack holding Lenora's ledger against his spine. They had expected riders and knives in the dark. They hadn't expected power itself to walk through the front door. Sheriff Rawley came first, shotgun raised, eyes darting nervously at the crowd forming behind him. Beside him strode Senator Alden Varney, fine coat brushing the dirt, silver-headed cane clicking sharp against the boardwalk. Behind them, two deputies with stiff jaws and restless hands. Varney surveyed the scene with a politician's calm, though Caleb saw the pulse hammering at his temple. His gaze landed on the drying lines, the wet sheets fluttering like black banners of rebellion. His nostrils flared. "Seize it," he ordered. "Burn the lot." The deputies moved for the stacks. Wells's ink-stained hands trembled, not with fear but rage. "These words don't belong to you, Senator. They belong to everyone who reads them," Rawley sneered. "You got a short memory, Carter. Paper don't protect you from buckshot." But outside the crowd swelled. Shopkeepers, mothers with aprons still dusted in flour, a miner with black dust on his skin, a boy clinging to his father's coat. Dozens of eyes peered past Rawley into the shop, watching, weighing. One woman spoke first, her voice flat. "What's he hiding from us?" Varney's smile flickered. He lifted a page, crumpled it in his fist. "Lies, manufactured by agitators, who'd tear down the work that keeps food on your tables. This woman," he jabbed a finger at Lenora, "is a thief, a fraud. You think she cares for Dry Creek? She'll ride off and leave you in ashes." The crowd murmured. Suspicion wavered like a flame in wind. Caleb felt Lenora's hand brush his sleeve, steady, as though reminding him that silence can kill as quick as bullets. So he spoke. "If she's lyin', why's your name written in her dead brother's ledger? Why's Judge Pike stampin' pages with the same split circle I found burned into my barn? Why's a good man hanging from a cottonwood 'cause he asked too many questions?" A hush fell. Then the miner spat in the dust. "I lost my brother to a cave-in. No one paid out. Sheriff said it was accident." "Maybe it weren't," Rawley barked. "Shut your mouth, Bill." But the words had landed. Varney straightened, cane thumping once, his voice swelling with polished venom. "You people forget yourselves. Railroads brought this town life. Men like me give you roads, jobs, law, and this is your thanks." believing ink scratches from a widow and a drunk rancher. Something in Caleb snapped at that. He strode forward, voice low but carrying. Call me drunk, call her thief, but you don't get to call Isaac Mayfield a liar. He died for, and I'll damn well die making sure his voice don't get buried. The crowd roared. Not cheers, not yet, but something deeper. A collective growl. Rawley panicked. He raised his shotgun toward Caleb. In that heartbeat, every choice came to a point sharper than Creed's knife. Caleb didn't think. He dove sideways as the blast thundered, buckshot tearing a row of type drawers into flying splinters. Lenora screamed. Wells fired his own shotgun, the boom rattling windows. Rawley's hat spun into the street, his ear a bloody ruin. Chaos ignited. Deputies drew, the crowd surged. Someone threw a rock that shattered against Varney's cane. The air filled with smoke, shouting, the metallic stench of fresh blood. Caleb rolled up, Colt barking twice. One deputy crumpled, the other fired wild, bullet punching a hole through the press's side plate. Wells cursed, grabbed an iron bar, and brought it down across the man's shoulder with a crack like a felled branch. Varney stumbled back, shrieking for order no one could hear. He tried to push through the crowd, but hands caught him, rough hands, calloused hands. They didn't strike him yet, but they held him like a wolf cornered. Lenora darted through smoke, ledger sack still against Caleb's spine. She pulled him up, eyes blazing. We can't stay. More come. Then we end this now, Caleb growled. Creed's voice answered from the alley, gladly. He came like a phantom, rifle in hand, face a mask of rage. His sleeve was bandaged from Caleb's knife earlier, but his aim was steady. Ledger, he spat. Now, or I'll drop her first. The crowd scattered at the sight of him. The street emptied in seconds, leaving only the fallen, the wounded, and the handful still willing to stand. Wells leveled his shotgun, but Creed shot first. The newspaperman staggered, buckshot tearing into his side, ink and blood mingling on his shirt. Lenora cried out. Caleb roared, fired his Colt, grazing Creed's ribs. Creed snarled, advanced, rifle butt smashing against Caleb's jaw. Stars burst white. Caleb fell, ledger sack skidding free. Creed bent, snatched it up, triumphant. This ends with me. But Lenora was faster. She lunged, tackling him with fury born of grief. The two crashed into the dirt, sack between them. Creed struck her hard, backhand cracking across her cheek. Still she clung, nails digging into the canvas like it was her brother's very bones. Caleb staggered up, Colt shaking in his grip. He lined Creed's back, hesitated. Lenora's body tangled too close. Creed's knife flashed, arcing toward her throat. Caleb fired. The bullet punched through Creed's chest, jerking him stiff. His knife fell, his body sagged. He coughed once, scarlet froth at his lips. His eyes met Caleb's, not fear, but cold promise. You think this stops it? Creed rasped. Bigger men, bigger teeth. They'll swallow you whole. Then he was still. Silence rang. The press hissed steam from a cracked valve. Wells groaned from the floor, blood pooling under him. Caleb rushed to his side, pressing cloth to the wound. Stay with us, Carter. The newspaperman's lips twitched in a half-smile. Cressel, sing louder without me maybe. His eyes found Lenora. Print it all. His hands still. Lenora bowed her head, gripping his ink-stained fingers until they went cold. Varney tried to slip away, but the townsfolk closed ranks. They weren't shouting now. Their silence was worse, a heavy collective judgment. Rawley, ear bloodied, crawled to his knees, shotgun forgotten. You'll hang for this, Boone. He spat weakly. Both of you. Caleb looked out at the townsfolk, at the fear, the grief, the slow hardening resolve. That's up to them, he said. They buried Wells behind the print shop at dawn. Lenora and Caleb stood by as the townsfolk lowered the plain box into earth. A miner muttered a prayer. A woman laid one of his printed sheets atop the coffin. His last words carried to ground with him. By evening, the press was turning again. Young boys inked rollers. Old women fed pages. Farmers stood guard with rifles at the door. Every sheet carried the same headline: Rail Corruption and Murder Exposed. The ledger of Isaac Mayfield. Bundles rode out on wagons, slipped into saddlebags, carried by train hands sympathetic to the core. Within days the story would be in Abellin, Topeka, even Kansas City. By the week's end, the East, Varney had fled, escorted by deputies who found no welcome in Dry Creek anymore. Raleigh vanished into the night, badge left behind on the jailhouse desk. Power had slipped from their hands like water through a sieve, but Caleb knew they weren't beaten. Not yet. Wolves don't retreat forever. On the third night, Lenora sat with Caleb on the ranch porch, watching stars burn holes in the dark. The ledger lay between them, its pages worn, but alive. You could walk away, she said quietly. Sell your cattle, leave this county, never look back. Caleb shook his head. I'd still hear Isaac. I'd still see Carter bleed. Some debts don't get walked off. She studied him, moonlight soft on her bruised cheek. You married a stranger and woke to a thief. You should have left me behind. I didn't marry a thief, Caleb said. I married a fight. Guess I was starved enough to need one. For the first time since he'd known her, Lenora laughed, low, broken, but real. The papers spread. The story sparked hearings in Topeka. Rail contracts frozen. Names whispered in smoke-filled rooms. Judge Pike resigned for health. Varney's star dimmed, though men with deeper pockets circled to protect him. No single ledger could topple an empire. But in Dry Creek, the people remembered. They remembered the day ink and blood mixed on Main Street, when a widow's voice carried louder than a senator's, when a rancher stood his ground, not for cattle, but for truth. And Caleb Boone, he never forgot the shape of that empty bed, the cold place where trust had first been broken. Because in the end, it wasn't just a story of betrayal, it was a story of what comes after, the long, stubborn work of standing when the wolves circle. And if you'd been there, listening to the press sing through the night, you might have felt it too. That whisper that history don't belong to the loudest men with the sharpest teeth. Sometimes it belongs to the stubborn few, who bleed ink into paper and dare to tell the world.